Partisan politics brought the Oregon legislature to a standstill in 2023. A 43-day-long walkout by 9 Republican senators and 1 independent was the longest walkout in state legislative history. Although Republicans are in the minority, Democrats couldn't move forward with the state's business without them. And those who walked out put their own political futures on the line, challenging a voter-approved measure that was supposed to prevent this from happening. With major issues on the table, including homeless funding and semiconductor industry investments, the Oregon legislature's partisan divide was on full display. 10 conservative senators began their walkout on May 3rd. It didn't end until 43 days later, as Democrats who controlled the legislature grew increasingly frustrated over the lack of movement. The face of the walkout, Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp, who challenged the majority's efforts to advance bills to protect abortion rights in Oregon and institute more measures on gun control.
Initially, you did state the boycott was because of the bills you object to not being written in plain English, but isn't this really an attempt to stymie the Democrat majority agenda, especially when it comes to abortion, gun control, and transgender health care?
Well, here's what I would say is the Democrats have an opportunity to be bipartisan, and they're choosing not to be. They're choosing to be extremely partisan. And there are lots of bills we don't like that we've allowed to go forward. But what we're not willing to do is to allow unlawful and unconstitutional bills to go forward. And unfortunately, some of these bills fall into that category. And so it doesn't have to be about necessarily a particular topic, but we've asked for some things to happen, and they're unwilling to do that. And so we are holding firm.
So as the Republicans held firm, the Democrats grew even more frustrated politically, trying to move the legislature forward without their partners from across the aisle in the Senate. The walkout halted the people's business in both houses as the Senate could not achieve a quorum.
Oregon Senate President Rob Wagner is here from Salem to address those issues. And Senator, welcome back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks for having me, Ken. It's good to see you.
First, the Republican walkout. The Republicans say they're not coming back until the last day of the session on June 25th. So what does that mean for the business of the legislature now?
Well, right now in the Oregon State Capitol, we are continuing to have committee meetings, and we are passing budgets out through all the different committees onto the floor, and we're ready for people to come back, and we're going to start having good conversations out in the open in a transparent way around our education budgets and housing and homelessness and economic development and all the issues that I know Oregonians want us talking about.
Will you meet with Senate Minority Leader Tim Knopp and Governor Kotek to bring this walkout to an end?
We consistently extend an invitation to Senator Knopp since the beginning of the legislative session. Just a little more than a week ago, I actually set up a 6-party conversation for multiple days with the Speaker, the Majority Leader, in both the House and the Senate, and the minority leaders, and we came and had robust conversation about process issues and really asked for what people were wanting to try to achieve an end to this walkout. And unfortunately, in recent days, we've seen additional cancellations by the minority leader. But we're still here every single day. I said 3 things at the beginning of this session. Number 1, good ideas come from everywhere. Number 2, that there's always room for kindness. And number 3, my door is always open.
There are more than 100 bills to consider now, including some education funding, public defenders, the list goes on. Will any of these bills be acted on?
Yeah, absolutely. They're ready to go as soon as people come back. And a lot of them have I'm really proud of this, broad bipartisan support.
The walkout continued and absences racked up. And another factor came into play. The voter-approved Measure 113, a constitutional amendment that states that legislators with 10 unexcused absences are disqualified from serving in the legislature following their current term.
Are you going to challenge that?
Yeah, so I think there's likely a discrepancy on whether or not they can actually run. But I have no doubt that Measure 113 will be challenged and probably on multiple fronts.
Which is what happened. More on that in a moment. Newly elected Governor Tina Kotek promised to get involved if the two sides could not get their act together.
Well, I expect legislators to get back and do their job. And I've relayed that to the Senate Republicans. It is true they have not spoken. But they're adults. They have to figure out how to get together and get back to work.
But 1 week dragged into two into three, as the walkout continued, finally ending on June 15th. However, the Democrats did concede ground to the Republican senators to get them back to the table. They watered down bills on abortion rights and guns. Not everything either side wanted, but it cleared the way for legislators to pass dozens of necessary bills, including a $200 million homeless package and a big wildfire protection bill.
Well, I think it's good that they reached compromises. The work of Oregonians needed to get done. Budgets need to get passed. We're on track to pass the budgets. Significant bills, in addition to the bills that had some changes, were really important for the state. I want to commend them for figuring it out. And I hope we can build on the relationships that have developed here at the end of session so that when legislators are back in February, that we have a good, successful session for Oregon. We still have a housing and homelessness crisis, a mental health and addiction crisis. We want to make sure our early literacy rolls out well. We don't have time for people to not be getting along, so hopefully we can figure it out.
So as the legislature finally adjourned on June 25th, attention turned to the political futures of the legislators who walked out. The challenges to Measure 113 started hitting the courts and Oregon's Secretary of State's office. A federal judge rejected the argument that Measure 113 is unconstitutional in a ruling that essentially reaffirmed voter intent. Oregon Secretary of State LaVon Griffin-Valade had stated that the senators cannot run for re-election in 2024. And in a separate case, the Oregon Supreme Court is considering whether the language of Measure 113 allows them to serve another term before the penalties kick in. That case is still pending. Next, Portland's problems out of control. Next, the effort to get the city and Multnomah County on the same page when it comes to the homeless, open drug use, and crime. Portland's ongoing search for solutions. Next on Eye on Northwest Politics, the Year in Review.